Ms. Gustafson and Mr. Horowitz, I guess I'd first like to start out asking, how do you prioritize your cases for investigation? Ms. Gustafson, go with you first.
I think that, I have about 45 criminal investigators. The priorities, and they're spread out throughout the country. So I think there are any number of factors go into how they're prioritized, including the caseload of the investigators that I have. My criminal investigators work very closely with DOJ, U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, and very often the decisions on whether a case is a go or no-go often is dependent or contingent upon talking to DOJ, seeing the likelihood of that case, of course, being accepted for prosecution, because it's important that we do that. So, in addition, of course, certainly the amount of loss is always a factor in any case. For my investigators, again, the two biggest things that we're looking at are loan fraud in the SBA lending programs, and then small business contracting fraud. And so one of the emphasis I made was to reemphasize a little bit the contracting fraud. Those cases sometimes went a little bit by the wayside, and so we put more of an emphasis on that. And I think that plays a part in that, which has resulted in some of our biggest cases, including a $100 million contract fraud case with a $1 billion contract that was about to be awarded fraudulently that we had a couple years ago. So there are any number of factors.
So I mean, likelihood of prosecution or quality of the prosecution, then the dollar amount, Mr. Horowitz?
If it's a criminal allegation involving Justice Department employees or Justice Department funds, we will investigate it. We will open an investigation, go forward. I've had occasion where I've had to call the U.S. Attorney because my personal view, having been a prosecutor in corruption cases before, dollar value in a corruption case shouldn't matter like it should in many others. If a public official's taking money, that warrants, and you can prove it as a crime, that warrants prosecution. In the non-criminal context, because we get thousands of various pieces of information coming across, first off, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have authority over attorney misconduct in the course of attorney work. That's a problem from our standpoint. So those cases go back to the department. They investigate themselves in that instance. For non-attorneys, we will look at the seriousness of the allegation. We take high-level official misconduct, so GS 15 and above. Generally, we will look at that. And then separately, we assess, in the remaining cases, what's the need for independent oversight? What value do we bring as an independent oversight authority to look at that?
Okay. I just kind of want to explore your relationship with the agency of the department and your independence. Let me first ask, what is I realize this is kind of hard to summarize or typify, but what would be a ballpark in terms of how long you want to take on an investigation? I mean, how quickly you want to get through something? What would be an average length of time for an investigation?
Well, let me speak from our standpoint. We have such a wide range, frankly, of allegations. We have some in the prison. We have the prison system. We might have a video. That'll take a very short time. Other more sophisticated grant-related frauds that could require us to go administrative or grand jury could take months and years, and we don't control some of those because those then go to the prosecutor and they have to bring them. But
okay, well, let's talk about timing of release of a report. Right. Who's in charge of that? Is that strictly a call made by the Inspector General's office?
In a non-criminal case, we would make the call. In a criminal case, obviously, it's going to be the indictment, and that's the prosecutor's control.
In terms of the reports you issue, and I'll ask both the Inspector Generals this, what is the appropriate relationship between yourself and the agency of the department you're investigating?
From our standpoint, when we do an investigation, we do it of the department. If it's a third party, for example, we might have the FBI.
Okay,
we're working.
I'm just talking about if you're talking about your department.
Right. Internally, we do it ourselves. We talk about it ourselves, and when the time comes, like in Fast and Furious, to issue the report, we send the proposed final report for comment, and that's when the department gets its first chance to comment.
So it'd be totally inappropriate for the department to comment or see the report ahead of time before it's released?
We will give them a chance to review our, for example, in audits, investigations, audits and reviews. Let me do audits and reviews. We will give them a chance to review and provide us, in some instances with informal comment, but always with formal comment, which is what you see
Okay, but
attached
that would be a comment, that would be an addendum to the report. They wouldn't be, would they be changing wording in your report?
They would not have authority to change wording. In audits, for example, we will often sit down with the component and say, here's what we found, here's a problem. For example, ATF undercover operations that we just did. We found unreconciled $100 million worth of cigarettes. We went to the department when we heard about that to alert ATF and the department that they needed to fix the problem.
Okay.
So, for example, in that instance, they would know even earlier in the process.
But the department agency wouldn't change the wording of your report?
We would not let them change wording. They could comment
so
to
that would
us.
be totally inappropriate if an agency or department changed wording within a report.
I would not allow the department to edit my document. They might give me comments. They might say I've got it wrong. We would then sit down and talk about it internally, and we make the decision.
Ms. Gustafson, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Again, and I have to say for myself, I'm basically talking about the audit context. My criminal investigators, again, that would be, we're talking about.
Again, I'm talking about a report on your agency, your department.
Right. The reports that we issue are done by us. Certainly, there is always a lot of communication between the agency. There's no question, though I'm not an auditor, that they're probably suggesting language, but do they get to dictate language and edit and then have final say? No, absolutely.
Would either of you ever, or would it be appropriate for you to utilize the agency or the department's counsel in any capacity?
The department actually doesn't have a general counsel. It has the Office of Legal Counsel, and we would not necessarily go to them for guidance or legal advice.
Ms. Cousins?
No, as the IG Reform Act notes, we have our own counsel. Certainly, OGC always has their own opinion of the legal issues in our audit reports, and that, and we get to hear those, but we do not rely on them.
Okay, well,
let me echo that. I go to my general counsel regularly on issues. That's where I would go.
But again, your general counsel in the IG's office,
IG
not in the
general
department's.
counsel. Correct.
Okay, thank you.